وفي نفس السياق تحدثت مع الرئيس الروسي فلاديمير بوتين ومع العاهل السعودي الملك سلمان، وكنا قد أجرينا حديثا مهما حول إنتاج النفط وأوبك، بحيث يقوم قطاعنا النفطي باستمرار في أدائه الجيد، وبحيث لا نرغب بأن يكون هناك أي قصور في هذا القطاع في بلادنا أو في أي بلد آخر في العالم. لذا هناك 10,000 من الوظائف قد يتم خلقها أيضا، وأعتقد أن مجموعة أوبك قريبة من التوصل إلى اتفاق، وسوف يتم العمل على تخفيض 10 مليون برميل يوميا. أود أن أهنئ الشعب الأمريكي على تقديم التضحيات الكثيرة، ونعلم بأن أناسا كثر يقدمون التضحيات من أجل إنقاذ غيرهم، وهذا سوف يأخذنا بآمال كبيرة إلى إعادة الافتتاح قريبا. هذا ما أتمناه، وأعلم بأنه نكتب أنبل فصول في تاريخ الولايات المتحدة، وأننا سعدنا بالأخبار التي تم تناقلها عن رئيس الوزراء بوريس جونسون بعد أن خرج من غرفة العناية المركزة، وما زلنا نصلي له ولشفائه العاجل، فهذا تطور إيجابي ومهم. وفي سياق قيام منطقة نيويورك بالاستمرار في معركتها في مواجهة فيروس كورونا، فإن مركز جافيد قد تم تحويله إلى مستشفى ب3,000 سرير، وسوف يكون الأكبر في البلاد، وهذا بفضل المحترفين وفرقة العمل الهندسية العسكرية التي قامت بعمل دؤوب في بناء 21 مستشفى مؤقت في كافة أنحاء البلاد ومراكز صحية، أضافت بذلك 17,000 طبيب، 17,000 سرير طبي، ووكالة إدارة الطوارئ الفيدرالية تعمل بصورة لصيقة، وسوف نقدم باستمرار كافة معدات الحماية للأطباء والممرضين، وتم إنجاز حتى اللحظة 24 طائرة من مشروع إيربريدج، وهناك 21 أخرى قد تم جدولتها في المستقبل القريب. ومع وصول هذه الطائرات سوف تقوم بنشر حمولتها إلى الوجهات المطلوبة. سوف تقوم الولايات المتحدة بتعزيز الخطوات اللازمة، وما يذكرنا بأننا قد حبانا الله بأفضل متخصصين في الطواقم الطبي، والأعمال المتخصصة بالاختبارات باتت أكثر تطورا والأفضل في العالم. وأود أن أشكر كافة الأبطال العاملين في الخطوط الأمامية الذين يحاربون من أجل إنقاذ حياة الشعب الأمريكي. تأكدوا بأننا بتنا في أعلى الهضبة، والآن بدأنا في النزول. يوم الأمس كنت قد تحدثت مع مجموعة كبيرة من المتخصصين في الصحة النفسية والعقلية، ولدينا أفضل أطباء في هذا المجال، أطباء في المجال الدولي المتخصصين في الصحة النفسية والعقلية، الذين يتخصصون ليس فقط في الصحة الجسدية بل بالصحة العاطفية والصحة النفسية، لأننا سوية نقف في هذه المعركة. والأطباء المتخصصون هم كانوا قد عملوا بصورة دؤوبة في هذا المجال، وأننا نرى أيضا إشارات مشجعة في مجال العلاجات. وفايزر قد ذكرت بأنها قد تتوصل إلى عقار لحقول الفيروس من تكرار نفسه، على أمل أن يتم العمل على بدء الاختبار في ضمن مجموعة اختبارات سريرية قريبة. هناك مشاعر قوية بالنسبة لهذا العلاج على وجه التحديد، وفايزر تعتقد بأن هناك مبشرات لا بأس بها. ومن خلال برنامج هيئة الغذاء والدواء فقد تم اختبار 15 عقار حتى اللحظة، وهي قيد 19 عقارا قد تم اختبارها، وهناك 6 أخرى الأخرى ما تزال قيد التخطيط والتجارب السريرية. التجارب لمضادات الأمصال ما تزال مستمرة في الشركات التي تقدمها في غرف الطوارئ للمرضى الجدد، وهناك نتائج جيدة حتى اللحظة. والشركة التي تقوم بتصنيع هيدروكسي كلوروكوين تقوم أيضا بتكثيف إنتاجها. وكما تعلمون أن هناك أناسا كثر كانت قد أوصت بزيباك والزنك، والحكومة الفيدرالية مستمرة في بناء المخزونات وتوزيع الملايين من جرعات تلك العقاقير للأطباء كما ترى ذلك ملائما. وأنني سعيد لأخبركم بأن هناك أشياء كثيرة تجري على قدم وساق. فقد قمنا بشراء وتخزين ملايين من تلك الجرعات، ووزعنا أعداد كبيرة منها إلى ميشيغان التي تضررت بشدة. وأقول اليوم بأننا قد تجاوزنا عتبة المليوني اختبار في الولايات المتحدة، وهذا إنجاز كبير لبلادنا، ولم تقم أي دولة أخرى في العالم بإجراء هذا الكم من الاختبارات الدقيقة. في ذات الوقت أننا نحقق تطورا كبيرا على الجبهة الاقتصادية في حربنا مع هذا الفيروس. وبعد قليل وزير الاقتصاد سوف يتطرق إلى الخطوات الجديدة التي تضمن حصول الموظفين على إجازات مدفوعة وإجازات مرضية، فضلا على ضرورة إبقاء العمالة الأساسية في وظائفها وضمن سلم الرواتب. ومن أجل تقديم الاحتياطي فإن المصرف الاحتياطي وافق على تقديم 2.3 تريليون دولار، وسوف يتم توفير 600 مليون دولار للشركات الصغرى، و500 مليار دولار سوف يتم توفيرها للمقاطعات وللمدن التي يبلغ عدد سكانها أكثر من 1,000,000 نسمة. إن إدارتي تعمل مع الكونغرس من أجل تجديد برنامج دفعات الشيكات الذي حقق نجاحا كبيرا وللعمالة من أجل الحفاظ على وظائفها، أي بمعنى إبقاء تلك الشركات بحالة عمل. وأننا بحاجة للديمقراطيين والجمهوريين للتوصل إلى اتفاق من أجل تمرير هذا التشريع. ويبدو بأن الأمور تسير في الاتجاه الصحيح، ويجب أن يصب هذا الأمر لمصلحة العمالة. وإذا نظرتم رأيتم أن هناك أناسا كثر قد تضرروا من تلك الجائحة. هناك تطورات إيجابية، ولذا لابد من الحصول على موافقة الحزبين. آمل أن يتم هذا الأمر خلال هذا اليوم. وكذلك وزارة التعليم كانت قد أعلنت عن تقديم 600 مليون دولار كمنحة للطلاب الذين تضرروا من هذه الجائحة. وأيضا دائرة المساكن كانت قد تضررت هي الأخرى، وقد تم تنازل عن القروض الطلابية لمدة 6 أشهر، وأيضا الإيجارات السكنية ل6 أشهر. هذا الأمر يرمي لإعانة مواطنين لفترة من الزمن والأمة بأكملها. أستطيع أن أقول وأن الأمريكيين يمشون قدما بهدف واحد، ألا وهو هزيمة هذا الفيروس من أجل أخذ بلادنا إلى مرتفعات جديدة في التقدم للوقوف على عتبة التطور الذي ينتظره الشعب الأمريكي. وقبل أن أدعو أن نائب الرئيس العظيم مايكل سوف أتلقى بعض الأسئلة، وبعدها سوف أتوجه إلى المفاوضات المتعلقة بشأن النفط والخطوط الجوية. تحدثتم مع الرئيس بوتين ومع العاهل السعودي. نعم. هل توصلتم إلى اتفاق بشأن تخفيض النفط؟ هناك إنتاج فائض ووفرة كبيرة لا نعلم ما الذي يجب أن نفعله بها. السعودية وكما تعلمون وروسيا ينتجان كميات كبيرة من النفط، وكان بحالة من الخصومة إلى حد ما حول مسألة الإنتاج، وبصراحة لا يوجد حتى أماكن لتخزينها. مخزوناتنا الاستراتيجية ومخزوناتنا الوطنية قلت بأنه الآن هو الوقت المناسب لتعبئتها بأسعار لم يشهدها أي شخص منذ خمسينيات القرن الماضي. لذا لنرى ما قد يحدث من خلال المحادثات التي جرت فكانت بناءة في مجموعة أوبك بلس. لنرى ما قد يحدث.
إذن
either today or tomorrow, one way or the other. Could be good, could be not so good, but I think one way or the other. Go ahead, Jim.
Mr. President, how could the administration discuss the possibility of reopening the country when the administration does not have an adequate nationwide testing system for reopening the country when the administration does not have an adequate nationwide testing system for this virus? Don't you need a nationwide testing system?
بطريقة أو بأخرى.
نعم، كيف يمكن للإدارة أن تتكلم عن إعادة فتح البلاد من دون أن يكون هناك نظام محدد للفحوصات على مستوى البلاد؟ ألا تحتاج كذا نظام؟
هناك نظام اختبارات عظيم الأفضل في العالم، ولكن هناك قطاعات في البلاد في حالة جيدة وقطاعات أخرى تتدهور. أعطينا ملايين الاختبارات وفي كل يوم نكتشف حالات جديدة، وسنذهب إلى أماكن أخرى في البلاد ونقوم بأعمال الاختبار والفحص.
ألا يجدر أن نتأكد أن الأمور آمنة
سنرى إذا كانت متوفرة هل تحتاج إليها؟ لا، تحدثنا عن 325 مليون نسمة. هذا لن يحدث كما تتصور. دول أخرى تفعلها ولكن بطريقة محدودة. ربما نحن قادة القطيع.
هنا أكثر من 16 مليون أمريكي خسروا وظائفهم. ما رأيكم؟
أعتقد أن الاقتصاد سيكون في حالة جيدة. هذا شعوري القوي. لدي شعور قوي بشأن أشياء كثيرة وسنقوم بعمل جيد. يبدو أننا وصلنا إلى قاع المنحنى من ناحية الوفيات. لم نرى مثل هذا من قبل. وصلنا إلى أرقام فظيعة، ولكن لو نظرت على التوقعات 100 إلى 220 ألف، وإذا لم نفعل شيئا 2.2 مليون نسمة. نحن وصلنا إلى أدنى مستويات التوقعات. آمل أقل من 100 ألف. سنرى. لا تستطيع أن تفعل شيئا حيال الناس الذين فقدوا أحبائهم، وأنا غير متأكد أن الكثير من الناس سيكونون في وضع جيد. أعتقد أن ما سيحدث هو أنه سيكون هناك عودة سريعة. أعتقد the people that were lost, and to their families, certainly you can never do a thing like that, but very successfully, and I'd like to say even more successfully than before. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Oil is trading today at about $23 a barrel in New York. Where would you want to see the price? Do you want it at $30, $40, $50 a barrel?
Well, I want to see it where there's a certain market, but I also don't want to see it where people have no idea. You know, we'll be opening up areas for storage of oil, massive areas for storage of oil, because oil today is not selling. And what happened is the virus knocked out 40% of the market. Immediately, you know that, you know the number, 40%. Now, there was a lot of oil, but it was very controllable. All of a sudden, they lost 40%. You look at the road, you look at the car, you look at what's going on. There's nobody driving. There's no reason for it right now. That'll start coming back. But we are storing millions of barrels of oil that nobody thought would even be possible. Frankly, ships turned out to be a good business for some people because they're filling up tankers, sending them out to sea and not saying where to go. They're just sitting out there loaded up with oil. So we want to save our energy in this country. We want to make sure that our energy companies, businesses, and employees, workers, remain strong. So that's how I'm involved. And I think that's going to happen. So right now, if you look, you're probably talking 23, 25. If they announce a deal, we can get it up. We need a minimum number so the companies don't go out of business. So they're not going to lay off all of these energy workers who are important to our country. And, you know, we're now energy independent. We could do something where we only used our oil. But I think the long-term benefit is to be able to just go with the market. And
تكمن في العودة للأسواق، وهذا الأمر سوف يفلح. إذا نظرتم إلى ما كان يحدث قبل 3 أسابيع أو أسبوعين فكانت الأمور كارثية. أعتقد بأننا قد وصلت إلى مستوى الحضيض، لكن الآن نتحدث عن $25 ولعلها ترتفع قليلا. بنفس الطريقة ننقذ اقتصادنا ونحصل على طاقة رخيصة ونحافظ على وظائفنا. إن ملاك الشركات الصغيرة يقولون لنا بأنهم لا يعرفون كيف يمكنهم الوصول إلى أموال المساعدات. هناك أرقام قياسية تقوم بها البنك مثل بنك أمريكا وسيتي بنك ومصارف أخرى بتقديم الأموال لن تصرف بتلك السرعة، لكن هناك طلبات يجب أن تقدم وأن يتم الوفاء بمتطلبات الحصول على القروض، لكن هناك مليارات الدولارات على شكل قروض وسوف تقوم المصارف بدفعها مباشرة. كيف يمكن لكم أن تنظرون إلى تاريخ 1 يوليو؟ لتعاملاتكم مع كندا ومع المكسيك. لدينا اتفاق مع المكسيك ومع كندا حيث سوف يتم تخفيض الإنتاج، وهذا الاتفاق كان هو الأسوأ فيما يتعلق بنافتا على مستوى التجارة. أننا ننهي هذا الاتفاق، والاتفاق الجديد الذي سوف يدخل حيز التنفيذ في 1 يوليو سوف يكون أفضل. فلننهي الآن معركتنا مع الفيروس، وبعد ذلك سوف نضع نصب أعيننا تلك الاتفاقيات التجارية التي نفعت المزارعين الذين سوف يحصلون على مكاسب كثيرة في المستقبل القريب. فكان الناس في السابق فكان المزارعون قد تضرروا، وتعلمون الآن أنه ما من فنادق ولا مطاعم أو أي من تلك القطاعات تعمل في الفترة الحالية. ذكرتم سابقا مشروع إبريل ومعدات الحماية الشخصية التي أرسلت إلى بلادنا. هل لديكم أي فكرة عن حجم الإمدادات التي سوف تأتي من خلال مشروع إبريل، وهل تخشون من تقديم أي مساعدة أمريكية إلى الخارج؟ إننا في وضع جيد وسوف يتحدث مايك بنس عن هذا الأمر. إذا ما نظرتم إلى المستشفيات فيوم الأمس كنت قد تحدثت مع حاكم لوزيانا وقال لي بأن هناك حاجة إلى 1000 سرير إضافي ونحن بصدد عملها، وسوف نقوم بمساعدة دول أخرى في أجهزة التنفس الصناعي في المستقبل، إذ أننا نقوم ببناء أعداد كبيرة منها. أننا بوضع جيد ونحن على تواصل مع الحكام باستمرار. لقد أرسلنا المليارات والمليارات من الدولارات أنفقت على أجهزة التنفس الصناعي والمعدات الوقائية، ولدينا 500 مليون كمامة، وسوف يكون لدينا ما يصل إلى 300 مليون كمامة خلال فترة قصيرة من الزمن. في الحديث عن تسريع وتيرة الاختبارات، البعض يتحدث عن إجراء 750 ألف اختبار مطلوبة في الأسبوع قبل افتتاح الاقتصاد. هل توافقون على تلك الأرقام؟ وإن لم يكن كذلك، ما هي عدد الاختبارات التي يجب إجراؤها قبل فتح البلاد؟ لا أعتقد بأنها قد تكون مطلوبة، لكن هذا رقم كبير سوف نسعى عدم الوصول إليه، وإذا دعت الحاجة فإننا قادرون على فعل ذلك. شكرا سيد الرئيس. اليوم الديمقراطيون دفعوا باتجاه الحصول على مزيد من الأموال لمجابهة فيروس الكورونا. نعم، هذه الأموال قد تكون ضرورية في المرحلة القادمة، سواء كانت سوف تخصص للبنى التحتية أو غيرها. سوف أترككم الآن مع مايك بينس ومع وزير الاقتصاد، وأتطلع إلى رؤيتكم يوم الغد. سوف يكون لدينا أخبار كبيرة يوم الغد حول ما يحدث في مجال الطاقة وما يحدث في قطاع الخطوط الجوية. أراكم يوم الغد إذن. شكرا جزيلا. أسعد الله أوقاتكم جميعا. أولا، لقد أتممنا أكثر من 2,000,000 اختبار في جميع أرجاء البلاد، وأنني سعيد لأقول بأننا نجري اختبارات على 100,000 شخص يوميا، ونعمل على مدار الساعة من أجل تكثيف أنواع الاختبارات التي اعتمدتها هيئة الغذاء والدواء في وقت قياسي. وسوف نستمر في هذه الوتيرة، وسوف يتم العمل على بناء المستشفيات في الأسابيع والأشهر القادمة. قد تحدث الرئيس للتو عن أن هناك ما يقرب 150 ألف شخص قد جاءت نتائج اختباراتهم إيجابية، و16 ألف منهم لقوا حتفهم وتوفوا. أود أن أطمئنكم أننا جميعا نعمل على كافة المستويات والجبهات لإنقاذ أرواح الناس، وأن تعزينا لأسر كل عائلة أمريكية فقدت أي من أحبتها بهذا الفيروس. لقد كان أسبوعا صعبا، لكن كما سوف تتطرق الدكتور بيركس فإننا نتطلع إلى البيانات في كل مقاطعة وكل يوم، ونستمر في رؤية أدلة تشير إلى أنه في المناطق التي أثرت فيها الجائحة بصورة مشددة في منطقة نيويورك ولويزيانا ومنطقة ديترويت، فإننا ما زلنا نستمر برؤية أدلة حول استقرار نسب الإصابة. وكما أشارت الدكتور بيركس فإننا قد اقتربنا من الذروة في تلك المناطق التي تضررت، وأننا نعبر عن امتناننا وشكرنا للشعب في كاليفورنيا وواشنطن الذين في هاتين الولايتين التي كانت نسب الإصابات فيها قليلة أو مستقرة. نراقب مناطق بوسطن وغيرها، وسوف تتطرق إليها الدكتور بيركس. نحث الشعب الأمريكي على الاستمرار في اتباع تعليمات وإرشادات فيروس الكورونا، لأننا قد نرى أيضا انتشارا في بعض المناطق الأخرى في الولايات المتحدة، لكن نجحنا في مناطق كثيرة بفضل قيامكم باتباع تلك الاختبارات. اجتمعت خلية الأزمة المعنية بمجابهة فيروس الكورونا، وأجرينا مكالمات مطولة مع أعضاء مجلس الشيوخ، وكان أيضا معنا الوزير منوشن ومعنا وزير الخزانة الذي كان قد تطرق في هذا الاجتماع حول البرنامج الشيكات الذي تم اعتماد 500 مليون دولار منها من قبيل القروض. وفي هذا الاتصال ناقشنا بأن وزارة الخزانة سوف تقوم بنشر وثيقة أسئلة وأجوبة مطروحة باستمرار وحول كيفية المشاركة في برنامج الشيكات. فيما يتخلص بالدفعات المباشرة الموجهة للأمريكيين، فإن الوزير منوشن أكد بأننا نحن ملتزمون بالجدول الزمني الذي سوف يخصص إلى إرسال $3,000 من قبيل المعونة المالية للأسر الأمريكية. وأي شخص مهتم بمعرفة أي معلومات إضافية بإمكانه أن يزور موقع وزارة الخارجية أو وزارة الخزانة. ومنذ تحدثت آخر مرة مع حاكم كانساس ومع حاكم كنتاكي وتكساس ورود آيلاند، في هذا الحديث كنت قد أكدت لهؤلاء الحكام بأننا قد وزعنا الموارد والمصادر بناء على توجيهات الرئيس. إن هدفنا أن نعمل مع وكالة إدارة الطوارئ الميدانية للوقوف على متطلبات كافة الولايات ومعرفة التقدم الذي يتم إحرازه في نيويورك ونيوجيرسي ولويزيانا بفضل الشراكة التي أقمناها مع حكام تلك الولايات. وفي كاليفورنيا وواشنطن أعتقد أن حالة كاليفورنيا وواشنطن يجب أن تعطي حالة من الطمأنينة بأننا نقدم كل ما يتطلب للعاملين في القطاع الصحي. وقد وافق الرئيس على أن هناك 45 ولاية باتت سوف يتم الإعلان عنها بأنها تعيش حالة طوارئ. في الحديث عن سياق العسكريين، وكنا قد تلقينا تقريرا من وزارة الدفاع بأن 4100 من العسكريين قد تم نشرهم في نيويورك ونيوجيرسي وكونيكت، وهم من الطواقم العسكرية التي تعمل على الأرض في جافيت سنتر وفي على متن السفينة US كومفورت. لكن مسألة الاستفادة من تلك المنشآت العسكرية كانت متواضعة حتى اللحظة. ويتم العمل أيضا على إقامة فرق مؤقتة، وقد تم تكريس 75 من تلك الطواقم العسكرية لتخفيف الأعباء المفروضة على النظام الصحي في نيويورك، لنطمئن من أن تلك المستشفيات الفيدرالية وأن جافيت سنتر سوف يكون مزودا بالطواقم التي يحتاج إليها. لكن تلك الطواقم العسكرية سوف يتم نشرها في الأماكن التي بحاجة إلى إغاثة وتخفيف الأعباء على النظام الصحي. بالنسبة لمنشآت أخرى في ديترويت، يتم العمل على تخصيص جزء منها في لويزيانا من أجل استقبال مرضى فيروس الكورونا. كما قلنا بأننا تجاوزنا عتبة 2,000,000 اختبار في البلاد، ومن خلال العمل مع الدوائر الصحية الحكومية ومراكز الاختبار. وهذا الأسبوع وكالة إدارة الطوارئ الفيدرالية ودائرة الصحة والخدمات الإنسانية سوف تعطي الخيارات لكل ولاية من أجل نقل نتائج الاختبارات إلى موقع يتم إدارته من قبل ولاية بعينها. أعتقد بأن هذا سوف يعطي المرونة لكل ولاية لاتخاذ الخطوات التي تراها أكثر أهمية، لكننا نقوم بمعالجة طلبات من
ونحن أيضا ندرس الطلبات المتعلقة باستمرار مشاركة الحكومة الفيدرالية في لويزيانا، في كولورادو،
New York and Dallas-Fort Worth. 49 flights are scheduled over the next 3 days. And we continue to work supplies. We continue to literally leave no stone unturned around America and around the world. We're literally in the process of acquiring tens of millions of supplies that are being brought into a distribution system organized out of FEMA and focused on the areas most in need. We're also bringing real innovation, and at the White House Coronavirus Task Force today, we tasked the FDA and CMS to review the feasibility of allowing hospital workers to use cloth gowns for performing procedures. It was observed that 20 years ago, most physicians and most surgeons wore cloth gowns every day and laundered them, but it's transitioned to disposable gowns, and we're working very rapidly in the next 24 hours, and we'll have guidance for hospitals and healthcare workers about the ability to in effect recycle gowns and make sure that we have the supplies that we need. As the President mentioned today, the President and the First Lady and I and my wife Karen were honored to be a part of a conference call with mental health professionals from all around the country. And we know while there are families that are struggling with the coronavirus and struggling with heartbreaking loss to the coronavirus, we understand this is a very challenging time for every American, but most especially Americans who struggle with mental disorders or struggle with addiction. And the President brought some incredibly dedicated people together to make sure that they know we're with them. Early on, the President expanded access to telemedicine, and we've also issued guidance for using technology to remain connected to social support groups. And we just urge everyone who may be feeling an emotional burden or a vulnerability during this time to reach out to the many resources that are there and to know that you're not alone, that we're with you, and we'll get through this, and we'll get through this together. So despite heartbreaking losses that continue this week in communities from New York to New Jersey to Louisiana, there are signs of progress and hope abounds. The reality is that we see new projections from the experts. And if the projections are right, it's because it's working, America. It's because the American people are putting into practice the social distancing, caring for their neighbors and their loved ones and their family members, and putting their health first. And we just want to urge every American to continue to put those principles and guidelines into practice every day. With that, I'm going to invite Dr. Deborah Birx up for an update. And Dr. Fauci will hear from the Secretary of Labor, and we'll take a few questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So I wanted to cover today not only what we're seeing across the United States, but some of the testing data to assure from the prior question, if we're testing, I'm sure you're following our numbers every day, and the amount we're going up, about 118,000 to 120,000 per day are being tested. So we're way over the 750,000 per week currently. We have some statistics. Now remember, we required this, thanks to Congress, to be reported. We have about 75% of that test data in now. About 1.5 million of those tests have been reported in. I just wanted to give you some ideas because sometimes we think that we're only testing in the hospitals, that this should give you an idea of the quantity and the types of tests that have occurred. So we've tested over 200,000 young people up to age 25. They have about 11% positivity rate. Over 500,000 people between 25 and 45. They have a 17% positive rate. Now remember, in order to get tested, you have to have symptoms. So this gives you an idea of the number of people who have symptoms that are not infected with coronavirus. Another nearly 500,000 people between 45 and 65, their positivity rate is 21%. Another nearly 200,000 between 65 and 85, 22% positive, and a small group of about 30,000+ individuals over 85, and they have a 24% positivity rate. And so this gives you an idea of we're testing throughout all age categories. I see a lot of men in the audience today. I just want to remind them about the importance of health care. Of the male-female ratio, 56% of the people who are tested are female, 16% positive, 44% male, 23% positive. So again, it gives you an idea about how men often don't present in the healthcare delivery system until they have greater symptomatology. This is to all of our men out there, no matter what age group. If you have symptoms, you should be tested and make sure that you are tested. We appreciate you engaging in that, and also really recognizing the issues about comorbidities and making sure that we're addressing those. I had a series of great calls with about 17 states that are in our more rural areas, specifically around our indigenous people and tribal nations. It was a very reassuring call, and we are testing across the country. We do have about 63% of states that have less than 10% positive despite significant testing. And within the indigenous peoples and tribal nations, they're seeing the same thing that we're seeing across the nation. Increased issues among those with comorbidities and those of elderly, but also issues in nursing homes. And so they are testing, many of these states are still capable of doing full contact tracing. And so they've been doing contact tracing from nursing home outbreaks and other outbreaks. It really gives us a clear impression of no matter what we do in the future, we need to really ensure that nursing homes have sentinel surveillance. And what do I mean by that? That we're actively testing in nursing homes, both the residents and the workers at all times. That is where, and that's how we saw this at the beginning. That's what we saw in Washington State. And that's what we're seeing in many of the states that have very low case attack rates. The other thing that I want to leave you with, we certainly know how desperate and difficult the situation has been in New York over the last few weeks. And we've been telling and talking about how this would be the week that would be most difficult because of the large proportion of cases that are coming from the New York metro area. What's been encouraging to us, those early states outside of Washington mitigation, all of the new areas that are having new increasing cases, we talked about them yesterday, Washington and Baltimore and the Philadelphia metro area. That includes Camden, Wilmington, and the counties around Philadelphia. We're seeing that the case numbers, what we'll get to as far as attack rates, we talked about 1 in 7 in 1,000 in New York that are being measured. These are coming in, even with their progress up their curve, in the 1 to 2 per 1,000 range, showing that when you start mitigation early, it has a very different impact. All of this data is coming together, the testing rates, the seropositivity, the age groups, who really needs hospitalization, ICU, the innovative pieces coming from, we heard a great report from Louisiana this morning on the phone call where they talked about a minimum now of 40% of people coming off of ventilators alive and leaving the hospital. This is very encouraging to us. Really shows amazing progress clinically at each of these hospitals and the real lessons what we're learning and sharing across hospitals. But really shows us that the original outbreaks were very large, but the newer ones that we talk about in Washington and Philadelphia and Baltimore, it looks like their attack rates and the attack rates in Denver and some of these other states that we have been talking about are much lower than New York and New Jersey. And this gives us hope about really understanding how to integrate this information together, not dealing with a model, but the real life cases that are occurring and understanding how to move forward together to really have a different future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. So just reflecting about what we've been doing over the last few days, remember last weekend when we made the forecast that this would really be a bad week? As I mentioned yesterday and the day before, it is, in the sense of deaths, a bad week. In fact, every day there seems to be a record of number of deaths compared to the day before. In fact, New York today had, again, another record of, I think the city itself was about 820 plus deaths. But what we were predicting with the increase and the real adherence to the physical separation, the guidelines that the Vice President talks about, the physical separation, at the same time as we're seeing the increase in deaths, we're seeing rather dramatic decrease in the need for hospitalizations. Like I think yesterday it was something like 200 new hospitalizations, and it's been as high as 1,400 at any given time. So that is going in the right direction. I say that, and I always remind myself when I say that, that means that what we are doing is working, and therefore we need to continue to do it. I know I sound like a broken record. That's good. I want to sound like a broken record. Let's just keep doing it. I get questions a lot, Dr. Birx and I, about these numbers, the projections that you went with from 100,000, 200,000, now down to 60,000. That's a sign that when, as I keep saying, when you take the data you have and you reinsert it into the model modifies. Data is real, model is hypothesis, okay? So that's what you have to do, and that's what I think we're seeing. The other thing that's some just broad general good news from the standpoint of a scientific standpoint, that there are a lot of candidate potential therapeutics that are going into clinical trials now that we're sponsoring at the NIH, the kinds of clinical trials that will give us the answer. Are they safe? Are they effective? And just what is the capability of using them under what circumstances, as prophylaxis, as treatment, in early disease, in late disease. So as the time goes by and we have the public health measures to try and contain this, we're doing an awful lot from a scientific standpoint so that when we do get to next year, next fall, next winter, hopefully we'll have something that we can offer in addition to the very important public health measures. So I'll be happy to answer questions later.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Vice President, thank you, and thanks to the task force, and of course thanks to the President for his leadership. The important public health measures that have been discussed so much in these briefings in this room have had a large impact in American workplaces. We saw that again today as the Labor Department released figures showing that 6.6 million new unemployment claims were filed last week. We're all mindful, the President mentioned this, that the American people are making difficult sacrifices. That has included being furloughed, laid off, or having a small business struggle. That said, American workers can be encouraged by how swiftly and comprehensively the President and Congress have responded. 3 weeks ago, the U.S. had never had a law requiring paid sick leave at U.S. companies. But 3 weeks ago, the President signed the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which did provide paid sick leave, as well as expanded family and medical leave for employees at small businesses, with those small businesses being reimbursed dollar for dollar for having provided that leave. Last week, we at the Labor Department issued rules to implement these leave requirements of the Families First Act, and we've been in near constant contact with employers and employees to help them understand the law, and in a number of cases already, to help workers get the leave that they were entitled to. Another unprecedented benefit for workers was provided in the CARES Act less than 2 weeks ago. That law, as you know, includes a $600 a week plus-up to unemployment benefits that are provided by the states. We have millions of unemployed Americans who are making a sacrifice for our national well-being. These bonus payments, and they're unprecedented, the government has never provided a plus-up unemployment payment like this. These payments are intended to make those workers whole as near we can. This temporary benefit is available not just to employees, but also to the self-employed and gig economy workers. Before the President signed the CARES Act, gig workers, independent contractors were not available for unemployment compensation. Today they are. At the Department, our team has worked day and night to enable states to make this benefit available. I'm pleased that a number of states are now making those $600 additional weekly payments. More states will follow in the coming days. How long it takes will vary by states. Some states' systems will take longer, but we at the Department will continue to support them. We have already dispersed $500 million to states to help them with their systems and making these payments. We have another $500 million that we're ready to release. And for workers who don't get this benefit when it's first due them, states will be able to catch them up later when their computer systems are able to make these payments. Let me add that we're also mindful at the Labor Department that many Americans remain in the workplace, including on the front lines in our hospitals, as well as our emergency responders. My department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, has been providing guidance to employers and employees on coronavirus since the early days of this health emergency. We are fielding and responding to calls from workers worried about their health, and sometimes from workers who believe they've been illegally disciplined by their employer for expressing health concerns. We will not tolerate retaliation. OSHA will continue to work with workers and employers to keep workplaces safe, using all the tools available to us, including enforcement if needed. I wanted to finish by commenting on the Paycheck Protection Program, which we heard about earlier, run by the Small Business Administration. This, of course, is loans to small businesses to enable them to meet certain costs, including utilities, rent, and, most important from my perspective, payroll. As you know, if these companies receiving the loans keep their workers on payroll, these loans are largely forgivable. Here's why that program is so important from my perspective. We're seeing unemployment filings right now of a like that we've never seen before. But these numbers aren't the result of an underlying weakness to our economy. Our economy has been vibrant, incredibly strong just weeks ago. If, as we've heard again today, if we are disciplined now and adhere carefully to the guidance being provided by health authorities, we'll get that economy back. The President spoke at the State of the Union of the blue-collar boom we are experiencing. We want to lay the groundwork now for a blue-collar bounce back. We'll get there in part by helping companies hold on to their workers, which is what the Paycheck Protection Program does. Keep them on payroll so that when businesses are ready to reopen, they have the workers they need and Americans have jobs. We will continue at the Department, and I know here at the White House, to be laser focused on American workers and jobs until this is done. So thank you very much.
Very well done. Thank you. Great job. Great. We'll take a few questions. Yes, please.
Mr. Vice President, a question for you and then a question for Dr. Birx or Dr. Fauci. Just to clarify, on the federal funding for testing sites in the states, are you saying that federal funding will remain for those sites, and will it remain at its current levels?
It's not merely federal funding, but in many cases we provided personnel from the U.S. Public Health Service and also flowed supplies, personal protective equipment that was required for some of the early forms of testing, but it's less required today with new formats for testing. But it is an option, and as I've made clear to several governors, we'll continue to partner with our states. But I have to tell you that the way states step forward with the concept of drive-through and community-based testing is really inspiring. For our part, working with FEMA and our great team at the U.S. Public Health Service, we've stood up some nearly 50 different drive-through test sites around the country, but literally there are hundreds that have been deployed by states and by hospitals and local healthcare providers. But in this instance, we wanted to at least give them the option to take control of that, but we'll continue to resource them with personnel, supplies, and any other support that they need going forward. And
then just a question for the doctors. I'm curious, did you see this information out of the CDC in South Korea today that shows that they're seeing evidence of reinfection in some people who had been cured of coronavirus? And what does that mean for our understanding of this?
yeah, have you seen that?
I'm not aware of what you're speaking about now, but clearly there have been anecdotal mentioning of what appear to be reinfection. You have to really be very careful when you say reinfection, because what and we were dealing with this with even Ebola back during the Ebola time, that someone might still, when someone does a test on them, do a PCR on a body fluid of some sort and be able to detect what are likely nucleotides that are not replication competent. So if you're telling me, which I don't think they're saying, that someone has coronavirus disease, they get sick, it's documented, they get better, and then a month or so later, they get sick with documented coronavirus disease. I don't think that's what they're saying, but I don't want to jump the gun on it until I see the data.
They use the word reactivate. Is that different?
Yeah. Well, yeah, what reactivating what means is that it depends what you mean by reactivating. If someone clearly is ill and they have virus isolated from them, that you may have a prolonged course. I'd like to see how long they reactivate. I mean, if they were sick and had documented virus, and then 3 months later they had documented virus, is that reactivation or is that infection with another virus? I'd like to see the data before I really comment on that. Yeah.
Dr. Fetch, I wanted to ask about medical criteria. You had a discussion with Dr. Birx and the other public health experts on Tuesday, I understand. Can you discuss what is the medical criteria that you guys are discussing in order to reopen the government? What is the medical criteria?
Well, it's less medical criteria than it is public health criteria. And that is, and I think it's really important because often people say reopen the government like it's a light switch that goes on and off for the entire country. We have a very large country with really different patterns of disease and outbreaks in different parts of the country. So it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. It's going to be, what is the kinetics of an outbreak? Is it on the way down? Is it essentially out? Is it still smoldering and possibly going up? I think you're going to have to take it individually. And
are there some benchmarks that you're looking at, though? I mean, are there some numbers that you're looking at, some data that you would like to see? What would you like to see before that happens?
Yeah, well, I will allow Dr. Birx to come up with just my own opinion. I don't think they're going to be benchmarks that are going to be consistent from one to the other. For example, I would not want to pull back at all in New York until I was clear that that curve really was doing what we've seen in other countries, a very steep decline down, and we had the capability, if there was a resurgence, of having everything in place to be able to do the containment as opposed to struggling with mitigation with what we've been doing. That's different than a relatively smaller city, town, or whatever you, in the Midwest or mountain regions, which is generally very well controlled. What I would want to see, do we have the capability of doing the isolation, contact tracing, and suppression of it? So it really varies differently. So I don't think there's one medical criteria. But Deb, if you want to speak to it.
Thank you. It's what I tried to cover in the brief presentation I gave. In talking to the 17 states that have indigenous populations and tribal nations and discussing with them what they were doing generally and what they were doing specifically through the Indian Health Service, they discussed the ability to find new cases and doing full contact tracing. And so they have strike teams. They are very well organized. You don't hear about them every day, and that's why I wanted to call them out. They're really doing amazing work at their public health institutions with their governors and their mayors, and they are in full contact tracing. Yes, they're doing social distancing, but they're also doing full contact tracing and understanding all aspects of their epidemic. So we're looking at those pieces, as well as when I was talking about blunting, really when you're starting to go up that curve, having that unbelievable blunting where you only get evident attack rates, and I want to be very clear about that. When we see cases, these are symptomatics that have been diagnosed. There's clearly, we believe, people we don't see. And that's why the antibody test is going to be helpful to us to really define that. So those are the pieces that we're bringing together to really analyze that. I did want to say the president talks about the 150 plus countries that are experience what we're experiencing. I just wanted to do a call out. We have Americans around the world in every embassy that are working with those countries now. This scarf came from Africa. It's one of my public health colleagues there. I just want to recognize the public health colleagues around the world who are doing all of this work together to change the course in their epidemics in every single country around the globe.
Let me go to another question if I can, but in response to that, just so you know, what the president's tasked us to do is there's a number of working groups and that are looking at not only how do we how do we reopen the country, but how do we stay open? And and I think most of America knows that no one wants to reopen America more than President Donald Trump. But the president's told us we need to do it responsibly, and we're going to follow the data. We're literally following the data on a county-by-county basis. This morning, we were literally presented with information of each county that had more than 100 new cases and had, went in the other direction, had, less than 100 than the day before. It's really remarkable. And so I think what you hear the health experts saying will inform the president's decision and timing. But make no mistake about it, that the best thing we can do to reopen America is put the coronavirus behind us, to reach the end of that curve with as little loss of life or hardship as possible, to have in place that we soon believe we will, the kind of therapeutics, I call them medicines that make you feel better, by this summer, to have more widespread testing that we're scaling up each and every day, and also to have the kind of guidance that the CDC is even now developing for businesses large and small, for families and for schools, for that day that we do reopen America. Question? Go ahead.
I'm going to ask one more follow-up to the doctor. So it touches on this question of when to lean back on mitigation. There is a study out of Los Alamos this week that I hope you've seen. It's on the CDC website that looks at this question of R-naught, which is a technical term that you understand that has to do with the reproductive rate of the virus. The study shows that the R-naught for coronavirus isn't between 2 and 3, as had been thought before, but it's actually closer to 6, which means that one person on average is infecting 6 others. So with this information, how does that impact the model? How can you begin to think about when to reopen society if it's more contagious than we thought before?
Well, I can tell you as the layperson on the stage,
Go for it.
we have known from the beginning that this is at least 3 times more contagious than the flu. And I believe that that fact alone has informed our projections and the modeling, but now I'll let the experts respond.
I'll go quickly and then we'll tag team together. So when we've been talking about the asymptomatic group, and that's why I gave you that testing data where 11% of young people under 25 were positive, many of them very low-grade symptoms. What we will be triangulating for you is the testing data with hospital admissions, and then you'll be able to start seeing spectrum of disease. Because what you're not seeing in spectrum of disease is people who never even think that this is something significant, that what they have. We're seeing the significant cases. In testing, you can see that we're getting a lot of people in with symptoms aren't positive. And so really finding out what is the R-naught. Is it 6? Is it 5? And the only way to do that at this point right now is to get the antibody tests out there and go into these places that had significant disease. When we talk about attack rates of 7 per 1,000 like New York and 5 per 1,000 in New Jersey, and test the healthcare workers, the first responders, all of the nursing homes for antibody, and really get to your question. Because right now it's still theoretic. We understand they're modeling this, and we will get the data to actually look at that. You will see what others have been presenting. So you presented the 6. What others are presenting, importantly, is they're modeling what's happening with mitigation, and they're publishing that the R-naught with mitigation is approaching like 1.3 and 1.5. So think of what that is. If it was 6, and then with mitigation, we have it into the 1s. That really shows the power of the American people. No one has varied R-naughts like that without a vaccine. But this is what's happening with really the power of the American people. Tony?
Yeah. Ditto to everything that Dr. Birx said, but I couldn't help but thinking when you talk about, you know what the worst enemy of an R-naught is? Physical separation.
How about one more?
But do we have
one more. Go right ahead.
Testing capacity in the country right now to reopen in the foreseeable future? I mean, because the president talked about 2 million tests. Are we going to have the testing capacity needed to make Americans feel comfortable going back into their workplaces? I mean, it seems to me that is a pretty critical question at this point. People are not going to want to go back to work if they think their coworkers might be carrying the virus we're not testing enough, how do we know it's safe to go back?
Well, I think the American people see the incredible progress that's been made after President Trump brought in the largest commercial labs in the world to scale testing, the likes of which we've seen. We are, as Dr. Birx said, well over 100,000 Americans being tested every single day. We have an antibody test that is coming online. Abbott Laboratories literally has thousands of machines across the country. We're working with hospitals and labs around the country to activate those machines for the 15-minute test.
Do we have enough testing right now?
Well, let me say we're moving every day toward meeting that moment. But let's be clear: reopening the country, as the president is very anxious to do at the earliest responsible moment, will be through a combination of facts. First would be that we are at the end of the coronavirus for most major communities. Another piece of that is that we have therapeutics for Americans to take medicines if they contract the disease. Another piece of that is guidance from the CDC to public institutions, to businesses large and small, about how to conduct themselves in a safe and a responsible way. And testing is also a piece of that. And as Admiral Joie has reflected, we are spending a great deal of time expanding testing today. Every single day there's more and more tests across the country. But we're also working to scale testing that as we move into this summer and move into the fall, we'll have the testing we need to do what these doctors call not diagnostic testing, which is to take a test of a person that has symptoms, but surveillance testing, so we can identify people that may have had it and may be immune, versus people people that we just need to know whether or not they were ever exposed or and were not exposed. How about one more quick question here, if I can? I think he had one right here, or I'll go to you in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. In the next few weeks, the Supreme Court is set to rule on DACA and about on the deferred action for childhood arrival, and about 30,000 of those people who are under that program are frontline healthcare workers. Is the administration in any way ready to protect them if the ruling comes in your favor and takes the protection out and they can no longer work in the health field as they're needed right now?
Well, I think the president's been very clear on his desire to reach a solution on that issue with the Congress. But let me say, whether it be healthcare workers or people working in Congress. But let me say, whether it be healthcare workers or people working in food supply, other people working in critical infrastructure, we're incredibly inspired by the way people across this country are stepping up to keep healthcare rolling and available, a high quality of care, even in areas deeply impacted by the coronavirus. And also, as we said the other day, hardworking people in our food supply, from the farmers to processors, to distributors, to truck drivers, to grocers. We received a good word that over the last several days we've actually seen a significant drop with one major company in absenteeism, within close proximity to someone who had the coronavirus, could return to work before the 14 days if they didn't have a fever, if they tested themselves twice a day and returned with a mask. But the dedication of people to continue to work is truly inspiring. And I know as we go forward, we'll work through a broad range of national issues, but we're going to be incredibly proud for a long time by the way people all across this country responded to this moment. So thank you all very much. We'll see you tomorrow.